The confidence paradox. You've probably felt it before, that heavy hesitation, the nagging voice in your head whispering, "What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough?" You stand at the edge of action, wanting to leap, but feeling like you need more confidence first. It's a cruel irony, isn't it? You tell yourself, "I'll start once I feel ready." But here's the paradox. Confidence doesn't show up at your door before the work. It's not waiting for you in a quiet corner of your mind. Confidence is built in the trenches of doing, not in the comfort of preparation. Imagine this: you're about to give a presentation, and every fiber of your being screams that you're not ready. You think back to others who seem effortlessly self-assured, people who stride into rooms, own their space, and speak as if they've been doing it their whole lives. But here's the secret they'll rarely tell you. Those people didn't wait for confidence to arrive before they acted. They acted first, stumbled, learned, and somewhere along the way, confidence grew. That's the essence of the confidence paradox. You don't gain confidence by avoiding the things that scare you. You gain it by walking straight into the fear and proving to yourself, "I can handle this." It's not about knowing you'll succeed. It's about showing up even when you don't know the outcome. Think about the first time you rode a bike. You didn't feel confident, did you? Your hands gripped the handlebars so tightly your knuckles went white, and your legs wobbled as you tried to balance. Confidence didn't swoop in to save you before you started pedaling. It was only after falling, getting back up, and pedaling some more that it began to grow. Each tiny success, every moment you stayed upright, built the foundation of what would later feel like second nature. But here's the tricky part. The mind doesn't like discomfort. It tricks you into thinking you need to feel sure before you act. It says, "What if I make a fool of myself? What if I fail?" And because you believe those whispers, you hold back. You think confidence is something other people are born with, a gift handed to the lucky few, while you're left waiting on the sidelines. The truth is far simpler and more empowering. Confidence isn't a personality trait. It's a skill. And like any skill, it's forged through repetition and resilience. The first time you speak up in a meeting, your voice might shake. The second time, it might still wobble. But by the third or fourth, you'll notice a shift. The fear that once gripped you will start to loosen its hold. The thing you once dreaded will feel, dare I say it, almost normal. And yet, the paradox doesn't stop there. Confidence isn't a one-and-done deal. It's not something you earn and keep forever, like a trophy on a shelf. It requires maintenance, a willingness to continue stepping into the unknown. The minute you stop challenging yourself, it begins to erode. That's why the most confident people you know are often the ones who keep pushing their limits. They understand that confidence isn't about mastering everything. It's about trusting yourself to handle whatever comes next. The paradox also reveals something deeper about human nature. Confidence isn't the absence of fear. It's the courage to act despite it. The people who seem fearless aren't immune to doubt. They've just learned to dance with it. They've figured out that confidence is built brick by brick with every risk taken and every fear faced. So, where does this leave you? It leaves you with a choice. You can wait for confidence to arrive like a bus that's perpetually delayed, or you can start walking toward it. You can embrace the awkwardness, the stumbles, the imperfection of trying something new. You can remind yourself that every expert was once a beginner. Every confident person once felt terrified. The confidence paradox isn't here to mock your hesitation. It's here to remind you that action is the antidote to self-doubt. It's here to show you that confidence doesn't precede action. It's born from it. So, take the first step, no matter how small. Speak the words, take the leap, and watch as confidence, that elusive feeling you've been waiting for, begins to grow in the shadow of your courage. The happiness paradox. You tell yourself, I just want to be happy. It sounds simple enough, doesn't it? Yet, the more you chase it, the further away it seems. Like a mirage in the desert, happiness shimmers on the horizon. But no matter how fast or far you run, it stays just out of reach. It's infuriating. This game happiness plays with you because the harder you try to grab it, the more it slips through your fingers. This is the happiness paradox, a truth that's both maddening and liberating. Happiness doesn't thrive under pressure. It's not something you can hunt down, capture, or pin to a wall like a trophy. The more you try to force it, whether by obsessing over achievements, possessions, or milestones, the more it recoils. But why does happiness behave this way? Imagine happiness as a shy animal in a forest. If you storm in, thrashing through the underbrush, shouting its name, it will hide. You'll scare it off with your frantic search. But if you sit quietly, breathe deeply, and pay attention to the stillness around you, it might come closer. It might appear in the corners of your awareness, not because you chased it, but because you made space for it. Think about the times you felt genuinely happy. Was it when you were stressing about how to be happy? Probably not. More likely, it was in moments when you weren't even thinking about it. Maybe it was sitting with friends, laughing at a joke that made no sense, or watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in colors you can't quite name. In those moments, you weren't chasing happiness. You were simply present, and happiness found you. But here's the cruel trick of the paradox. Society constantly tells you that happiness is something to achieve. It's a goal, a reward, a finish line you'll reach if you just work hard enough. Advertisements scream that you'll find it in the latest gadget, the next vacation, or the perfect relationship. Social media parades the curated highlights of other people's lives, making you feel like you're missing out. The more you buy into this narrative, the more happiness feels like a competition, a race you're destined to lose. The problem is that chasing happiness often leads you away from the very things that create it. You think, I'll be happy when I get that promotion, when I lose those 10 pounds, when I find the perfect partner. But happiness doesn't live in the when. It lives in the now. When you tie your happiness to future conditions, you place it on a pedestal so high it becomes unattainable. Here's where the paradox offers a surprising twist. Happiness isn't something you achieve. It's something you allow. It doesn't come from forcing outcomes or meeting expectations. It emerges when you surrender the chase and immerse yourself in the present moment. The very act of letting go, of releasing your grip on the idea of happiness, is what makes room for it to bloom. Consider the story of the man who wanted to be happy. So he quit his job, sold everything he owned, and traveled the world in search of it. He climbed mountains, meditated in monasteries, and chased sunsets across continents. Yet, no matter where he went, happiness eluded him. Exhausted, he returned home, sat in his backyard, and noticed the warmth of the sun on his face and the sound of birds in the trees. In that moment, happiness arrived. Not because he found it, but because he stopped chasing it. The paradox also challenges you to redefine what happiness means. It's not the constant high of euphoria or the absence of struggle. It's the quiet contentment that comes from accepting life as it is. It's the joy of small, unremarkable moments, sipping a cup of tea, hearing a child's laughter, or feeling the earth beneath your feet. So, how do you embrace the happiness paradox? You stop chasing. You stop telling yourself that happiness lives in the next big thing or that it's a prize you need to earn. Instead, you focus on what's here, right now. You notice the world around you, the sounds, the sights, the people you love. You practice gratitude, not for what you wish you had, but for what you already do. The paradox isn't a punishment, it's a gift. It's life's way of reminding you that happiness isn't out there waiting to be found. It's within you, waiting to be noticed. When you stop chasing it, when you let go of the desperate need to hold it tight, happiness stops running. It turns, walks toward you, and gently takes its place at your side. And in that still, quiet moment, you'll realize it was never as far away as you thought. The self-fulfilling prophecy paradox. You tell yourself, I'm not good enough. This won't work out. The thought feels harmless, doesn't it? Just a fleeting worry, a whisper of doubt. But here's where it gets tricky. That thought doesn't just stay in your head. It creeps into your actions, your decisions, your posture, your tone of voice. And before you know it, the thing you feared becomes real, not because it was inevitable, but because you expected it. This is the self-fulfilling prophecy paradox, a phenomenon as mysterious as it is powerful. What you believe, whether consciously or not, often shapes the reality you experience. If you walk into a situation expecting to fail, you subconsciously adjust your behavior in ways that make failure more likely. But if you expect success, you do the opposite. You rise to the occasion, fueled by a belief that you're capable. Think about it. Have you ever convinced yourself you wouldn't do well on a test or a presentation? Maybe you told yourself, I'm not smart enough, I'm not prepared enough. That belief colored everything. You studied half-heartedly, doubting it would make a difference. You entered the room with slumped shoulders, avoiding eye contact. And when things didn't go well, you thought, I knew it. But here's the twist. It wasn't destiny. It was your expectation steering the wheel all along. Now flip the script. Imagine walking into the same situation, telling yourself, I've got this. I've put in the effort and I'm ready. That belief changes everything. Your preparation is sharper because you believe it matters. Your presence is stronger because you trust yourself. And when you succeed, it feels natural because you created the conditions for success by expecting it. At its core, the self-fulfilling prophecy paradox reveals a profound truth. Your mind doesn't just observe your reality, it helps create it. Your beliefs act like filters, shaping how you interpret the world. When you expect failure, you notice every setback, every tiny sign that confirms your doubts. But when you expect success, you focus on opportunities, solutions, and paths forward. This isn't some abstract idea. It's woven into the fabric of how we live. In relationships, for instance, if you expect someone to let you down, you might act distant or suspicious, making it harder for them to prove you wrong. In your career, if you assume you're not qualified, you might hold back from opportunities that could prove otherwise. The prophecy becomes self-fulfilling, not because the universe conspires against you, but because your belief subtly shapes your actions. But here's the kicker. The paradox works both ways. Just as negative expectations can lead to failure, positive ones can pave the way for success. This isn't about blind optimism or pretending problems don't exist. It's about recognizing the power of belief to influence your choices and behaviors. Imagine an athlete stepping onto the field. If they've convinced themselves they'll lose, their performance will likely reflect that doubt. They might hesitate, second-guess their moves, or hold back. But if they step onto the field, believing in their training, their strength, their ability to adapt, they move with confidence. They might still face challenges, but their belief fuels persistence, and persistence leads to results. The paradox isn't magic. It's psychology. Your brain is wired to seek coherence between what you believe and what you experience. When there's a mismatch, it pushes you to close the gap. If you believe you're unworthy of success, your brain will unconsciously look for ways to prove that belief true. But if you believe you're capable, it will work just as hard to make that your reality. So, what does this mean for you? It means you have more power than you realize. Your beliefs aren't just private thoughts. They're the blueprint for how you approach the world. If you expect failure, pause and ask yourself why. Is it fear? Past experiences? What if you challenged that belief and replaced it with something empowering? The self-fulfilling prophecy. Paradox isn't here to trap you. It's here to free you. It shows you that your expectations matter, that your mindset isn't just a passenger on the journey, but a driver. When you understand this, you can begin to rewrite your story. You can expect better, act on those expectations, and watch as your reality begins to shift. And the beauty of it is this: success begets confidence, and confidence begets more success. With every small win, your belief in yourself grows stronger. So, the next time you catch yourself expecting the worst, stop. Ask yourself, what if I expected the best instead? You might just be surprised at how much power lies in that simple shift. The growth paradox. You want to grow, don't you? You want to be stronger, wiser, more capable. But here's the catch. Growth doesn't come wrapped in comfort. It comes cloaked in discomfort, fear, and uncertainty. And here lies the paradox. The very discomfort that fuels your growth is the thing you're wired to avoid. Think about it. When faced with a challenge that feels overwhelming, a tough conversation, a daunting new skill, or a risk that might end in failure, your instincts tell you to retreat. Stay safe. Don't push too hard. Your mind whispers, why make things harder than they need to be? And so, you step back. You stay in your zone of familiarity where nothing feels threatening. But here's the brutal truth. Nothing grows there either. Now, consider this. Every breakthrough you've ever had, every moment of growth, came with a degree of discomfort. Maybe it was the first time you spoke up in a room full of people, heart pounding, voice shaking. Or the time you took on a task you felt utterly unprepared for and surprised yourself with how much you could handle. Those moments weren't comfortable. They weren't easy, but they changed you. This is the growth paradox. The pain you instinctively avoid is the very thing that holds the seeds of your evolution. It's not there to break you. It's there to build you. But to see that, you have to lean into it, to push through the discomfort instead of running from it. Think of a muscle. When you exercise, you're essentially damaging it, creating tiny tears that hurt in the moment. But it's in the repair, the rebuilding, that the muscle grows stronger. The same principle applies to personal growth. Every time you step into discomfort, whether it's taking a risk, facing rejection, or admitting you don't have all the answers, you're creating those micro tears in your comfort zone. It stings, but it's also the only way to expand it. The paradox is frustrating because it pits two powerful forces against each other: your desire for growth and your instinct for comfort. On one hand, you long to evolve. On the other, your mind fights to keep you safe, steering you away from the very experiences that drive transformation. And the mind can be convincing. It tells you the timing isn't right, that you're not ready, that there's no shame in staying where you are. But here's the thing: growth doesn't wait for the perfect moment. It doesn't show up when you're ready. It shows up when you take the leap. The moment you stop waiting for confidence, clarity, or certainty, and instead embrace the discomfort of the unknown, is the moment you start to grow. Discomfort, as much as you might hate it, is a teacher. It reveals your blind spots, your weaknesses, and your fears. It forces you to confront parts of yourself you'd rather ignore. And in doing so, it gives you the opportunity to change, to become someone who can handle what you once thought was impossible. Think about how much of your life is shaped by the avoidance of discomfort. You stay in relationships that don't fulfill you because breaking free feels too painful. You stay in jobs that drain you because the thought of starting over terrifies you. You avoid tough conversations because you don't want to upset anyone. But what would happen if you leaned into that discomfort instead? If you saw it not as a threat, but as an invitation to grow? The truth is, growth is messy. It's awkward. It's uncomfortable. But it's also exhilarating. Every time you push past your instinct to avoid discomfort, you prove to yourself that you're capable of more than you thought. You build resilience, courage, and confidence, not because the path was easy, but because it wasn't, and you walked it anyway. The growth paradox isn't a punishment. It's a gift. It's life's way of pushing you to reach your potential, even when you resist. So the next time you feel that twinge of fear, that urge to step back into the familiar, pause. Ask yourself, what's on the other side of this discomfort? The answer might be everything you've been searching for. Growth isn't supposed to be easy. It's supposed to challenge you, to break down the parts of you that no longer serve you so that something stronger, wiser, and truer can emerge. The pain you avoid isn't your enemy. It's your guide. Follow it, and you'll find the evolution you've been craving. The paradox of control. You feel it building, the knot in your chest, the heat rising in your face, the swirl of thoughts racing through your mind. Maybe it's anger, fear, sadness, or anxiety. Whatever it is, it feels like too much. So, you do what seems logical. You try to control it. You push it down, tell yourself to calm down, force yourself to focus on anything else. But instead of fading, the emotion grows louder, stronger, harder to ignore. This is the paradox of control, a truth that defies your instincts. The more you try to suppress or manage your emotions with sheer willpower, the more they seem to spiral out of control. It's as if your attempt to rein them in only fuels their intensity. But why? Imagine standing in the ocean, facing a wave. As it rises, you panic and try to push it back with your hands. The harder you push, the more it crashes over you, leaving you gasping and flailing. Now imagine letting the wave come. You don't resist it. You don't fight it. You let it pass, and soon the water settles. This is the essence of the paradox of control. Emotions, like waves, aren't meant to be wrestled into submission. They're meant to be felt, acknowledged, and allowed to move through you. But here's the problem. You've been taught to see emotions as something to manage, fix, or avoid. Society tells you that being calm and composed is a sign of strength, while showing vulnerability is weakness. So you internalize the belief that you need to control your emotions to stay in control of yourself. Yet, this very belief is what traps you in a cycle of frustration. When you resist an emotion, you're essentially fighting yourself. You add a layer of tension on top of the original feeling, an internal tug of war that amplifies your distress. If you're anxious and you try to force yourself to be calm, you become anxious about your anxiety. If you're sad and you tell yourself to snap out of it, you feel guilt for not being able to. The emotion doesn't go away. It digs in deeper. Now consider what happens when you do the opposite. Instead of resisting the emotion, you name it. You say to yourself, "I'm feeling angry," or "this is fear." By acknowledging it, you create space between yourself and the emotion. You're no longer consumed by it. You're observing it. And in that space, something shifts. The emotion loses its grip because it's no longer being fought. This isn't about surrendering to your emotions in a way that lets them control you. It's about accepting their presence without judgment. Acceptance doesn't mean approval. It doesn't mean you want to feel this way forever. It simply means you're allowing the emotion to exist just as it is, without trying to change it. The paradox lies in this counterintuitive truth. When you stop trying to control your emotions, they often lose their power over you. Acceptance creates a kind of peace, not because the emotion disappears, but because you're no longer adding resistance to it. Think about it. Have you ever noticed that the more you try not to cry, the harder it becomes to hold back tears? Or that when you tell yourself not to think about something, it becomes all you can think about? This is the paradox of control in action. The act of resisting creates the very outcome you're trying to avoid. But when you lean into the emotion, when you let the tears fall or let the thought come and go, you find relief. The storm passes not because you forced it to, but because you let it run its natural course. This paradox isn't just about emotions, it's about how you relate to yourself. When you accept your feelings, you're sending a powerful message. It's okay to feel this way. I don't need to fight myself. That self-compassion creates a foundation of inner peace, even in the midst of emotional turbulence. So the next time you feel overwhelmed by your emotions, resist the urge to resist. Pause, breathe, name what you're feeling. Instead of trying to control it, simply sit with it. You might be surprised by how quickly the intensity begins to fade. The paradox of control teaches you a profound lesson. Peace isn't found in domination or suppression. It's found in acceptance. The harder you try to control what you feel, the more you become entangled in it. But when you let go, when you allow yourself to feel without judgment, you open the door to a deeper sense of calm. And that's where true control lies. Not in forcing your emotions away, but in learning to coexist with them. The vulnerability paradox. You hesitate. Your heart beats faster as the words linger on the tip of your tongue. You want to say them, to share what's weighing on your mind, but something holds you back. What if they judge me? What if they think I'm weak? The fear of rejection, of being misunderstood, feels too big, so you swallow the words and build another brick in the wall between you and the world. This is the vulnerability Paradox. The very act of opening up, which feels like exposing your weaknesses, is what builds trust, connection, and strength. Vulnerability, as terrifying as it feels, is not a sign of frailty. It's one of the greatest acts of courage. Think about the people you trust the most in your life. Chances are they're the ones who have let you see them at their most human. Maybe they've shared their struggles, admitted their fears, or shown their tears. It wasn't their perfection that made you trust them. It was their authenticity. They let you in, and that act of vulnerability created a bridge between you. But here's where the paradox gets tricky. Society has convinced you that vulnerability is dangerous, something to avoid at all costs. You're told to keep your guard up, to present a polished version of yourself, to never let anyone see the cracks. Strength, we're taught, is about invulnerability, being untouchable, unshakable, and yet nothing could be further from the truth. Imagine two people standing on opposite sides of a chasm, each wanting to reach the other, but unwilling to step forward. Vulnerability is the bridge they both need, but neither is willing to take the risk of building it. The result? They remain isolated, even though connection is what they crave most. The paradox lies in this. The very thing you fear will push people away is what draws them closer. When you open up, when you say, "I'm struggling," or "I need help," or "I care about you," you give others permission to do the same. Your vulnerability invites theirs, and in that shared space, connection is born. But let's be honest, vulnerability feels risky, because it is. There's no guarantee that opening up will be met with kindness or understanding. Sometimes people won't handle your vulnerability with care. They might judge, dismiss, or even use it against you. That fear is valid. But here's the thing, the alternative, never opening up at all, is a far greater risk. It's a guarantee of loneliness, of shallow relationships that never touch the heart of who you are. Think of vulnerability as a muscle. The first time you use it, it feels awkward and shaky, like trying to lift a weight that's too heavy. But the more you practice, the stronger it becomes. You learn to discern who's safe to open up to. You build resilience, knowing that even if vulnerability isn't always met with the response you hope for, it's still worth the effort. This paradox also reveals a deeper truth about strength. True strength isn't about never falling. It's about being willing to rise again after you do. It's about saying, "This is who I am, flaws and all," and knowing that your worth isn't diminished by your imperfections. Vulnerability is strength because it takes courage to be seen fully, to risk rejection in the pursuit of real connection. Now think about the moments in your life when someone else's vulnerability moved you. Maybe it was a friend admitting they were scared or a loved one sharing a painful memory. Did you see them as weak in that moment? Or did you feel closer to them, inspired by their courage to let you in? The vulnerability paradox isn't about oversharing or exposing yourself recklessly. It's about choosing to be authentic, even when it feels uncomfortable. It's about recognizing that walls may protect you from pain, but they also keep out love, trust, and belonging. So the next time you feel the urge to hide behind a mask, ask yourself, what am I afraid of? And more importantly, what could I gain by letting this mask slip? Vulnerability isn't easy, but it's worth it. It's how bridges are built, how trust is formed, and how love deepens. In the end, the paradox teaches us that what feels like weakness is actually the foundation of strength. By opening yourself up, by allowing others to see the real you, you don't just risk connection, you invite it. And in that connection lies the kind of strength that no amount of guardedness can ever provide. The paradox of memory. You sit quietly, lost in thought, replaying a moment from your past. Maybe it's a happy memory, a childhood birthday, the warmth of a loved one's hug, the laughter of a long-forgotten summer, or maybe it's a painful one, a mistake you can't forget, a loss that still stings. The scene feels so clear, so vivid, as if you've hit rewind and stepped back into that exact moment. But here's the unsettling truth. Every time you revisit a memory, you're not preserving it. You're changing it. This is the paradox of memory. The more you recall a memory, the less reliable it becomes. Memories aren't like photographs, frozen in time. They're more like clay, malleable, reshaped each time you touch them. And the more often you revisit a memory, the more it drifts from the original moment, evolving into something subtly or even drastically different. Think about it. When you recall a memory, you're not simply replaying a video in your mind. You're reconstructing it, piecing it together from fragments stored in different parts of your brain. The details, the emotions, the context, they don't all exist in one tidy package. Instead, your mind fills in the gaps, often influenced by your current emotions, beliefs, and even external suggestions. Over time, those reconstructions begin to overwrite the original, and what you're left with is less a record of what happened and more a reflection of how you now perceive it. Consider a story you've told countless times, a funny incident, a dramatic event, or a moment that shaped you. Each time you share it, you might embellish a detail, adjust the narrative for the audience, or reinterpret what it meant to you. What started as a memory becomes a blend of fact and fiction, polished by repetition. The paradox deepens when you realize how much memories shape your identity. Who you are is, in large part, a product of what you remember. But if those memories are constantly shifting, what does that say about the self? Are you a fixed being, anchored by your past? Or are you just as fluid as the memories you hold? Now think about how this paradox affects painful memories. When you replay a moment of hurt or regret, you might think you're gaining clarity or processing the pain, but in reality, you're also reinforcing and reshaping it, making it more vivid, more intense. Each time you revisit it, your mind adds layers, new interpretations, emotions, even imagined details that weren't there before. The memory becomes less about what actually happened and more about how you've come to feel about it. But this isn't all bad news. The malleability of memory is also a gift. It means that you're not a prisoner of your past. If memories can change, they can heal. You can reinterpret a painful experience, find meaning in it, or let it lose its hold over you. What once felt unbearable can, with time and perspective, become a source of strength or wisdom. The paradox of memory also reveals why shared memories often differ. You and a friend might recall the same event in wildly different ways. They insist the sky was overcast. You're certain it was sunny. They remember feeling happy. You were sure they were upset. Who's right? Neither. Both. Memories are personal, filtered through individual perspectives, and shaped by what each of you felt in the moment and every moment since. This paradox isn't just about personal memories. It's about collective ones, too. History itself is shaped by how we remember it. The stories we tell as societies about wars, movements, or cultural milestones are constantly reconstructed, reinterpreted through the lens of the present. What we choose to remember and how we remember it shapes how we see ourselves and our place in the world. So, what does this mean for you? It means your memories aren't sacred, untouchable truths. They're living, breathing stories. They grow with you, shift with you, and reflect who you are now as much as who you were then. The next time you find yourself lost in a memory, pause. Ask yourself, what am I adding to this? What am I changing? Recognize that the act of remembering isn't passive, it's creative. You're not just revisiting the past, you're rewriting it. The paradox of memory teaches us that the past isn't as fixed as we think, but far from being a limitation. This is an invitation to let go of memories that no longer serve you, to reframe the ones that hurt, to embrace the fluidity of the mind and the power it gives you to reshape your story. Because in the end, memories aren't just about the moments you've lived, they're about the person you're becoming. The procrastination paradox. You sit there, staring at the task in front of you. Maybe it's an assignment, an email, or a decision you've been putting off for weeks. You know it needs to get done, and yet you can't bring yourself to start. Instead, you scroll, you clean, you suddenly decide that reorganizing your closet is the most important thing you could possibly do. And all the while, a small, nagging voice whispers, "Why am I like this?" This is the procrastination paradox. The more you fear failure, the more you procrastinate. But the more you procrastinate, the higher the likelihood of failure. It's a self-defeating cycle, driven by the very thing you're trying to avoid. At the heart of this paradox lies a universal truth. Procrastination isn't about laziness. It's about fear. Fear of not doing well enough. Fear of not knowing where to start. Fear of putting in the effort and still falling short. The task looms larger the longer you stare at it, and the pressure to perform perfectly makes starting feel impossible. So, you delay, hoping the problem will somehow shrink with time. But it doesn't. It grows, feeding on your avoidance. Now imagine the clock ticking, the deadline inching closer. Instead of giving yourself more time to think clearly, you've given your fear more room to breathe. The once manageable task now feels like a mountain. The irony is cruel. The thing you avoided because it seemed overwhelming is now even more so because of the time you've lost. Think back to the last time you procrastinated. Did you feel a sense of relief in the moment? Probably, but that relief was short-lived, wasn't it? Because the task didn't disappear. It stayed, lurking in the back of your mind, quietly draining your energy and focus. By the time you finally tackled it, the pressure was unbearable, the work rushed, and the result not nearly as good as it could have been. This paradox isn't just about tasks. It's about how you relate to yourself. When you procrastinate, you're not only delaying the work, you're feeding a narrative that says, "I can't handle this. I'm not good enough." And the more you believe that, the more you procrastinate, creating a vicious loop of self-doubt and avoidance. But here's the thing. Procrastination isn't just a trap. It's also a teacher. It's trying to show you something about yourself. The tasks you avoid often reveal where your fears lie. Maybe it's fear of imperfection, Maybe it's fear of rejection. Maybe it's fear of even starting because starting makes failure possible. The paradox, however, holds the key to breaking free. The only way to escape the cycle is to face the very thing you're avoiding, the fear itself. This doesn't mean waiting for the fear to disappear. It means taking action despite it. It means understanding that fear is normal, but letting it dictate your choices isn't. Think about the times you've overcome procrastination. Maybe you started small, breaking the task into tiny steps that felt manageable. Maybe you reminded yourself that done is better than perfect, or that starting badly is better than not starting at all. Whatever strategy you used, the moment you took action, something shifted. The fear that once seemed so paralyzing began to lose its grip. The paradox also teaches a powerful lesson about momentum. Starting is the hardest part, but once you do, even if it's messy, even if it's imperfect, you're in motion. And motion creates progress. Each small step chips away at the fear, proving to yourself that the task isn't as insurmountable as it seemed. But why does procrastination feel so hard to beat? Because it offers comfort. Delaying a task provides immediate relief, an escape from discomfort, even if it's temporary. Your brain rewards you for avoiding the thing you fear, reinforcing the habit. But that comfort is fleeting, and the cost is long-term stress and regret. The solution? Embrace the discomfort of starting. Remind yourself that procrastination is not a character flaw. It's a coping mechanism. And like any habit, it can be unlearned. The next time you find yourself putting something off, pause. Acknowledge the fear. Name it. Then take one small action, no matter how insignificant it feels. The procrastination paradox isn't here to shame you. It's here to show you that fear loses its power the moment you act. Starting might not make the fear disappear, but it will make you stronger. And in the end, the task you feared will not define you. The courage to face it will. The paradox of self-improvement. You tell yourself, I want to be better at your job, in your relationships, with your health, or maybe just as a person overall. You start making lists, setting goals, and identifying everything you need to change. But the more you focus on self-improvement, the more you start noticing flaws you didn't even realize you had. What began as a quest for growth turns into a cycle of self-criticism. This is the paradox of self-improvement. The harder you try to fix yourself, the more broken you feel. It's as if the act of focusing on your flaws magnifies them, making them seem larger than life. Instead of moving toward self-acceptance, you spiral deeper into the belief that you'll never be good enough. Think about it. When you scrutinize yourself under the harsh light of improvement, every imperfection feels like a glaring deficiency. You notice the way your voice shakes during presentations, the extra weight you're carrying, the times you weren't patient enough with a loved one, and instead of appreciating your efforts or progress, you fixate on how far you still have to go. The paradox lies in this simple truth. Real growth doesn't come from tearing yourself apart. It comes from accepting yourself as you are, flaws and all. Self-improvement isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more of yourself. And you can't do that if you're constantly at war with who you are now. Imagine standing in front of a mirror, picking apart your reflection. Every perceived flaw feels like a problem to solve. But what if, instead of criticizing, you looked with curiosity? What if you saw those imperfections not as evidence of failure, but as part of what makes you uniquely you? That shift from judgment to acceptance doesn't stop you from growing. It creates the foundation for real, lasting change. Here's why the paradox is so powerful. When you focus solely on fixing yourself, you operate from a mindset of lack. You tell yourself, I'll be happy when I lose the weight, when I get the promotion, when I'm finally confident. But that mindset keeps happiness perpetually out of reach. Each time you achieve a goal, another flaw takes its place. The cycle never ends because the underlying belief remains the same. I'm not enough. Now consider what happens when you start from a place of self-acceptance. When you say, I am enough as I am, and I'm also open to growth, you free yourself from the need to prove your worth. Improvement becomes a choice, not a punishment. Instead of chasing perfection, you focus on progress. This paradox also reveals something deeper about the nature of self-improvement. Growth doesn't mean fixing every flaw or eliminating every insecurity. It means learning to live with imperfection. It means recognizing that you are a work in progress, and that's okay. Think about a time when you grew the most, when you overcame a challenge, learned something new, or became a better version of yourself. Chances are that growth didn't come from a place of self-loathing. It came from a moment of courage, self-awareness, or the willingness to embrace discomfort. It came from moving forward, even when you didn't feel fixed. The paradox of self-improvement also teaches us to question the endless pursuit of better. Society bombards you with messages that you're not enough as you are. Ads promise you'll feel complete with the right product. Influencers sell you the idea of a perfect lifestyle, and self-help culture convinces you that there's always one more thing to improve. But this pursuit often leaves you feeling emptier, not fuller. What if you paused that chase? What if you stopped asking, how can I fix myself? And started asking, what do I already love about myself? Self-acceptance isn't complacency. It's the foundation for healthy growth. When you're not battling your own reflection, you have more energy to focus on what truly matters, building a life that aligns with your values, not someone else's definition of better. The paradox of self-improvement reminds you that growth doesn't start with criticism. It starts with compassion. Accepting yourself as you are doesn't mean you'll stop striving. It means you'll strive with kindness. It means you'll set goals not to erase your flaws, but to celebrate your potential. So the next time you feel overwhelmed by the urge to fix everything about yourself, pause. Look at who you are right now, in this moment. You are not a problem to solve. You are a person to nurture. Growth isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming whole. And that begins with the radical act of saying, I am enough, right here, right now. The paradox of success. You've worked hard, pushing through obstacles, seizing opportunities, and grinding through countless setbacks. And now, here you are, standing at the top, having achieved what once felt impossible. Success. It feels good, doesn't it? But lurking in the shadows of that achievement is a quiet, insidious danger, the risk of losing everything you've worked for. This is the paradox of success, the very thing that drives you to succeed. Hunger, discipline, relentless effort often fades once you've reached your goal. Success has a way of seducing you into complacency, making you believe you've arrived, that the hard work is behind you. But that belief is a trap, because staying at the top requires the same fire that got you there in the first place. Think about it. How many stories have you heard of people, companies, or empires that rose to greatness only to crumble soon after? Athletes who dominated their sport only to lose their edge. businesses that revolutionized industries, only to be outpaced by competitors. The reason is simple. Success breeds comfort, and comfort dulls the sharpness that success demands. Oh, imagine climbing a steep mountain. The higher you go, the harder the climb gets. Every step requires focus, grit, and determination. But once you reach the summit, it's tempting to rest. You admire the view, feel the wind on your face, and tell yourself you deserve to relax. But success isn't a summit. It's a moving target. The moment you stop climbing, you begin to slide back down. The paradox is cruel because success whispers lies into your ear. It tells you, you've made it. You don't need to push as hard anymore. But the truth is, the forces that drove your ascent, curiosity, discipline, resilience, don't disappear just because you've achieved your goal. They're what keep you sharp, keep you growing, keep you at the top. Consider the greatest innovators and leaders throughout history. They didn't let success lull them into stagnation. Instead, they treated every achievement as a stepping stone, a platform to push even further. They knew that success isn't a finish line. It's a foundation for the next challenge. But here's where the paradox deepens. The more successful you become, the harder it is to stay hungry. Comfort feels good. Resting on your laurels feels deserved. And the bigger your success, the more people around you will tell you to slow down, enjoy it, take it easy. But complacency is a slow, silent killer. It doesn't announce itself with grand failures. It creeps in through small compromises, tiny drops in effort, and missed opportunities. Think about a time when you were at your peak, whether in your career, relationships, or personal goals. Were you still pushing as hard as you did to get there? Or did you let yourself coast, assuming your momentum would carry you? Success, as rewarding as it feels, can trick you into believing that effort is no longer necessary. But the truth is, it's necessary now more than ever. The paradox of success also reveals a deeper truth about human nature. We're wired to chase goals, to seek progress, but once we achieve those goals, the fire that fueled us often dims. That's why so many people feel lost after success. They thought reaching the top would bring lasting fulfillment, only to realize that without a new challenge, life feels stagnant. So, how do you escape the trap of complacency? By remembering what got you here, the same mindset that fueled your rise. Curiosity, discipline, adaptability must become your constant companion. Success isn't about reaching the top and stopping. It's about maintaining the habits, the mindset, and the drive that made success possible in the first place. The paradox also offers an opportunity to redefine what success means. Instead of treating it as an endpoint, see it as part of a larger journey. Success isn't a static state. It's a dynamic process. It's not about what you achieve, but how you grow, adapt, and continue to challenge yourself. So, the next time you feel tempted to rest on your accomplishments, ask yourself, what's next? Success isn't about avoiding failure. It's about staying ahead of it. And staying ahead requires humility, curiosity, and the willingness to keep climbing, no matter how high you've already gone. The paradox of success teaches us that the greatest threat to greatness isn't failure, it's complacency. And the only way to truly honor your achievements is to keep striving, keep learning, and keep growing, because success isn't a destination. It's a commitment to becoming the best version of yourself over and over again. The attention paradox. You want to be noticed. Maybe it's by someone you admire, a partner, a friend, or even a crowd. You try harder, speak louder, work longer, shine brighter. Yet, the harder you push, the more they seem to pull away. It's frustrating, even humiliating, this invisible force that seems to widen the gap the more you reach for connection. This is the attention paradox. The more you chase attention, the less likely you are to get it. The harder you try, the more you come across as desperate, and desperation is like a repellent to human connection. The paradox reveals a profound truth. What truly attracts people isn't effortful grasping, but effortless authenticity and a sense of self-assured detachment. Imagine being at a party. Someone walks up to you, their energy frantic, their words tumbling over each other as they try to impress you. They're everywhere, hovering, over-explaining, desperate for validation. How does that make you feel? Overwhelmed? Maybe even irritated? Now, imagine someone else in the same room, relaxed and at ease. They're not trying to win anyone over. They're simply present, radiating quiet confidence. You're naturally drawn to them, aren't you? That's the paradox in action. The more you try to force attention, the more it slips through your fingers. Why? Because desperation signals neediness, and neediness suggests a lack of value. When you chase someone's attention, you're implicitly saying, "I need you to validate me." That's a heavy burden to place on anyone. Authenticity, on the other hand, says, "I'm complete as I am. Your attention is welcome, but not required." And that mindset, it's magnetic. Here's the irony. People are drawn to those who don't chase them. Detachment isn't about being cold or aloof. It's about being so comfortable in your own skin that you don't need external approval to feel whole. When you stop grasping for attention, you create space for others to lean in. The paradox also teaches us that connection can't be forced. When you're authentic, when you're not performing or trying to impress, you give others permission to be authentic too. That's the foundation of genuine connection. But when you chase attention, you disrupt that balance, making the interaction about validation rather than connection. Think about a time when you tried too hard to win someone over. Maybe it was a date, a job interview, or even a friendship. You over-prepared, over-talked, overcompensated, and walked away feeling drained, even if you succeeded. Now think about a time when you didn't try at all. You were just yourself, not worried about the outcome, and people responded to you naturally. The difference wasn't your abilities, it was your mindset. The paradox also reveals something deeper about how we value ourselves. When you chase attention, you're often seeking to fill a void within. You're looking for someone else to confirm your worth, to tell you you're good enough. But here's the hard truth. No amount of external attention can fill an internal void. That validation has to come from you. So, how do you escape the attention paradox? By focusing less on how others see you and more on how you see yourself. Instead of trying to impress, ask yourself, am I showing up authentically? Instead of craving someone's approval, ask yourself, what do I admire about me? When you shift your focus inward, something magical happens. The need for attention fades, and people start noticing you for the right reasons. The paradox also teaches the art of balance. While detachment attracts, complete indifference doesn't. The sweet spot is in showing genuine interest without attaching your self-worth to the response. It's saying, I value your attention, but I don't need it to feel valuable. That kind of energy is irresistible because it's rare. So the next time you find yourself chasing attention, pause, breathe, ask yourself what you're really seeking. Often, it's not the attention itself, but the validation you think it brings. And here's the good news. You don't need anyone's permission to feel valuable. That power has been in your hands all along. The attention paradox reminds us that connection isn't about effort. It's about authenticity. The harder you try, the more you push people away. But when you let go of the need to be noticed, when you focus on being fully and unapologetically yourself, attention has a way of finding you. And when it does, it's not just fleeting. It's real. The paradox of forgiveness. You've been hurt. Someone betrayed your trust, broke your heart, or inflicted pain you didn't deserve. The wound lingers, raw and aching, and with it, a weight you carry everywhere you go. Forgiveness feels impossible. Why should you let them off the hook? If you forgive, doesn't that mean saying their actions were okay? This is the paradox of forgiveness. Forgiving someone isn't about excusing their actions. It's about freeing yourself from the emotional chains they've left behind. It's not a gift you give to them. It's a gift you give to yourself. Think about it. When you hold on to resentment, who suffers the most? Not them. They might not even realize the depth of your pain. But you feel the heaviness of anger, the sting of bitterness, the exhaustion of replaying what they did over and over in your mind. Resentment, as they say, is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Forgiveness is the antidote, not for them, but for you. But here's the paradox. Forgiveness doesn't feel fair. It feels like letting someone get away with their wrongdoing. You think, if I forgive them, it's like saying what they did doesn't matter. But forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It doesn't mean the pain didn't happen or that their actions were justified. Forgiveness is about acknowledging the hurt while choosing not to let it define you anymore. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack up a mountain. With every step, the weight pulls you down, making the climb harder. You don't want to let go of the backpack because it feels like a part of you now, a reminder of what you've endured. But the truth is, it's holding you back. Forgiveness is setting that weight down. It doesn't erase the mountain or the climb. It simply makes the journey forward possible. The paradox also reveals a deeper truth about control. When you refuse to forgive, you tie yourself to the person who hurt you. You replay their actions, their words, their betrayal, giving them power over your thoughts and emotions. Forgiveness breaks that tie. It says, you no longer control how I feel. I choose to move forward. Forgiveness is hard because it requires vulnerability. It asks you to face your pain, to let go of the righteous anger that feels like a shield, and yet holding on to that anger doesn't protect you. It keeps the wound open. The paradox lies in this. Letting go feels like weakness, but it's the ultimate act of strength. But let's be clear, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean inviting someone back into your life if they've shown they can't be trusted. Forgiveness isn't about them. It's about you. It's about saying, I won't let your actions dictate my peace. Think of someone you've forgiven in the past. At first, it felt impossible, didn't it? The hurt was too fresh, the betrayal too deep. But over time, as you let go of the anger, you felt lighter. The pain didn't disappear, but it stopped controlling you. That's the paradox at work. Forgiving didn't erase what happened, but it freed you from carrying it. This paradox also teaches us that forgiveness isn't a single moment. It's a process. It's not about flipping a switch and feeling instantly better. It's about choosing day by day to let go of the resentment. Some days, it will feel harder than others, but each step forward loosens the grip the pain has on you. Forgiveness doesn't mean you have to tell the person they're forgiven or even reconcile with them. In some cases, it's healthier not to. Forgiveness is an internal act, one that happens in your own heart and mind. It's about reclaiming your peace, not granting theirs. So, how do you begin? Start by acknowledging your pain. Name it, feel it, honor it. Then remind yourself that forgiveness isn't about fairness. It's about freedom. It's not about forgetting. It's about moving forward. And most importantly, it's not about them. It's about you. The paradox of forgiveness teaches us that letting go isn't about weakness. It's about reclaiming your power. The person who hurt you doesn't deserve to take up space in your heart any longer. Forgive not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. And in that act, you free yourself to heal, to grow, and to find the joy that anger and resentment kept hidden from you. The paradox of habits. You brush your teeth every morning, maybe without even thinking about it. It's automatic, mundane, a part of your day so routine that you barely notice it. And yet, without it, imagine the slow, creeping consequences. Cavities, discomfort, decay. Habits are like that. Small, seemingly insignificant actions that, over time, shape your entire life. This is the paradox of habits. The things you do daily feel too small to matter, but over time, they determine everything. Tiny, consistent actions compound in ways you can't see at first, creating monumental change or devastating consequences far down the line. Imagine planting a seed. At first, it's just a speck of green in the soil, barely noticeable. You water it, tend to it, day after day. Nothing dramatic happens. It feels like your effort is pointless, but weeks pass, then months, and the tiny seed grows into something towering, a tree providing shade, fruit, or flowers. Habits are no different. Each small action you take is a drop in the bucket, a single brush stroke in the masterpiece of your life. The paradox is frustrating because habits feel so inconsequential in the moment. Skipping one workout, eating one unhealthy meal, or procrastinating one afternoon doesn't seem like it'll matter. And in truth, it won't today. But repeat those small actions day after day, and the compound effect takes over. What seems harmless in isolation becomes life-altering over time. Now flip the script. A single push-up, a few pages read, a 5-minute meditation. None of these feel like they'll transform you. They're so small, so unremarkable, that they're easy to dismiss. But string them together for weeks, months, years, and they become the foundation of incredible change. The paradox is this: the actions that create the biggest results rarely feel big in the moment. Think about someone you admire, an artist, an athlete, a leader. Their success seems monumental, almost unreachable. But peel back the curtain, and what you'll find isn't dramatic, one-time efforts. It's a collection of small, deliberate habits repeated consistently over time. A runner doesn't train for a marathon by running 26 miles on day one. They start small, gradually building stamina with each step. This paradox also explains why bad habits are so seductive. Their consequences are delayed, making them feel harmless. Skipping a workout doesn't make you unhealthy overnight. Scrolling on your phone instead of working doesn't ruin your career in a single afternoon, but over time, those small choices add up, creating outcomes that feel inevitable. The same is true for good habits, though the rewards are delayed as well. Building a healthy habit can feel thankless at first. You might eat healthy for a week and see no change, or save money for a month and feel no closer to financial freedom. The lack of immediate results is why so many people give up before the habit has a chance to work its magic. The paradox of habits teaches us that the most meaningful changes in life aren't born from dramatic transformations, but from tiny, consistent actions. It's not about going to the gym for 6 hours in one day. It's about going for 30 minutes 3 times a week for years. It's not about reading an entire book in one sitting. It's about reading a few pages every night. Habits are powerful precisely because they're small. They sneak under the radar of your resistance. Starting a big, daunting project feels overwhelming, but committing to 5 minutes, that's manageable. And once you start, momentum takes over. But here's the paradoxical beauty. Habits compound. One small action leads to another, and over time, they snowball into something much bigger than the sum of their parts. The book you write page by page, the fitness you build 1 rep at a time, the confidence you gain by showing up even when it's hard. So how do you harness this paradox? Start small. Commit to habits that feel almost too easy. Instead of running a mile, put on your shoes and walk for 5 minutes. Instead of meditating for an hour, try 1 minute of deep breathing. The secret isn't in the size of the action, it's in its consistency. The paradox of habits reminds us that greatness isn't built in a day. It's built in the unnoticed, unremarkable moments, the ones that seem too small to matter until they become the foundation of everything. And when you finally look back, months or years later, you'll realize it wasn't one big leap that changed your life. It was the thousands of tiny steps you took along the way. The fear paradox. Fear grips you. Your heart races, your palms sweat, and your mind screams, "Stay safe, don't do it." It could be a big fear, public speaking, failure, rejection, or something smaller like an awkward conversation or a new experience. Whatever it is, the instinct to avoid it feels overwhelming, even logical. But here's where the paradox begins. The more you avoid your fears, the stronger they become. Yet, the moment you face them, they start to lose their power. This is the fear paradox. Fear thrives in the shadows of avoidance, feeding on the space you give it. But when you step into its light, something surprising happens. It shrinks. Think about the last time you avoided something out of fear. Maybe it was putting off a difficult conversation, skipping an opportunity, or avoiding a challenge that felt too big. In the moment, avoidance feels like relief. You think, thank goodness I don't have to deal with that. But that relief is fleeting because the fear doesn't go away. It waits, growing stronger, feeding on your avoidance until it becomes even harder to face the next time. Now, imagine the opposite. Think of a time you faced a fear head on, even if your voice shook or your hands trembled. Maybe it was giving a presentation, confronting someone, or trying something you'd never done before. Leading up to the moment, the fear felt insurmountable. But once you acted, didn't it feel smaller? The monster you'd built up in your mind turned out to be far less terrifying than you imagined. That's the paradox at work. Fear is a master of illusion, growing in the space of what-ifs and worst-case scenarios. Avoidance gives it room to create those illusions while action dismantles them. Why does this happen? Because fear isn't just a response to danger, it's a response to uncertainty. When you avoid your fears, you allow the uncertainty to grow. Your mind fills the unknown with every possible negative outcome, making the fear seem larger than life. But when you face it, you replace that uncertainty with reality. And reality, no matter how uncomfortable, is rarely as bad as the stories fear tells you. Imagine a dark room. In the corner, you see a shadowy figure, menacing and undefined. The longer you stare, the more terrifying it becomes. But when you turn on the light, you realize it's just a pile of clothes. Facing your fears is like turning on that light. It doesn't make the situation perfect, but it shows you what you're really dealing with. And it's almost always less scary than the shadow in your mind. This paradox also explains why small acts of courage lead to big changes. Facing a fear once doesn't just diminish that fear, it builds confidence. It teaches you that fear, while uncomfortable, isn't fatal. You survived, you learned, and each time you repeat the process, you become stronger, more resilient, and less controlled by your fears. But avoidance teaches the opposite. It reinforces the belief that fear is too big to handle. Each time you avoid, you tell yourself, I can't do this, and that belief becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The longer you wait, the harder it feels to act, and the cycle continues. The fear paradox challenges you to see fear differently, not as something to run from, but as something to work with. Fear isn't the enemy. It's a signal, a teacher. It shows you where you're uncomfortable, where you need growth, where you're pushing the boundaries of your comfort zone. And that's where life happens, outside the safe, familiar bubble of what you already know. So, how do you face your fears? Start small. You don't have to dive headfirst into your biggest anxieties. Take a tiny step. Afraid of public speaking? Practice in front of one friend. Fearful of failure? Start with a low-stakes project. Each step chips away at the fear, proving to yourself that you can handle it. The paradox also teaches the importance of reframing. Instead of seeing fear as a stop sign, see it as a green light, a signal that you're about to do something meaningful. Fear often shows up when you're standing at the edge of growth. Recognize it for what it is, a challenge, not a barrier. The fear paradox reminds us that fear isn't something to eliminate, it's something to confront. The more you face it, the more you grow, and with each step forward, you teach yourself a powerful lesson. Fear doesn't have to control you. It's not a wall, it's a doorway. And every time you walk through it, you emerge stronger on the other side. The paradox of perception. You look at the world and think, this is just how things are. But is it? The way you see reality feels solid, unshakable, the truth. Yet, if you dig a little deeper, you'll notice something strange. Your perception isn't as objective as it seems. It's shaped by your beliefs, what you think, feel, and assume about the world. And here's where it gets tricky. Those beliefs are, in turn, shaped by your perception. This is the paradox of perception. The lens through which you see the world is shaped by what you believe. But what you believe is constantly reinforced by what you see. It's a feedback loop that feels like reality, but is, in fact, your own creation. Think about it. If you believe the world is a harsh, unforgiving place, you'll notice every rude comment, every failure, every moment of struggle. Your mind will filter the billions of stimuli you encounter each day and latch onto the things that confirm your belief. But if you believe the world is full of kindness and opportunity, you'll start to notice small acts of generosity, doors opening where you thought none existed, and moments of joy you might have otherwise overlooked. The paradox is powerful because it explains why people can experience the same situation and come away with completely different interpretations. Imagine two people walking through a crowded city. One sees chaos, noise, stress, strangers brushing past. The other sees energy, a vibrant hum of life, people with stories and destinations. The city hasn't changed, but their perceptions of it have, shaped by the beliefs they brought with them. Now, here's where the paradox deepens. Your perception isn't just passive, it actively shapes your reality. If you believe people can't be trusted, you might approach them with suspicion, creating tension that fulfills your belief. But if you believe people are generally kind, you'll act warmly, inviting kindness in return. In this way, your perception creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. This paradox also reveals why change feels so hard. If your beliefs shape your perception and your perception reinforces your beliefs, how do you break the cycle? How do you step outside a reality that feels so concrete? The answer lies in small, deliberate shifts. You can't change your perception overnight, but you can challenge it. Start by questioning your beliefs. Ask yourself, is this really true, or is it just the way I've been conditioned to see things? When you challenge a belief, even slightly, you create cracks in the lens through which you view the world. And here's the beauty of the paradox. When you change your beliefs, your perception begins to shift. Suddenly, you notice things you didn't before. The kindness of a stranger, the opportunity in a challenge, the beauty in something you once dismissed. That shift in perception reinforces your new belief, and the cycle begins again, but this time in a direction you've chosen. Think about someone who inspires you. Maybe they see opportunities where others see obstacles or approach life with optimism even in tough times. They're not delusional. They're working with the paradox of perception. They've chosen beliefs that empower them, and in doing so, they've created a reality that aligns with those beliefs. But the paradox isn't all sunshine and simplicity. It also means you're constantly at risk of being trapped by your own assumptions. If you believe you're not good enough, you'll see evidence everywhere to support that belief. Missed opportunities, criticism, comparisons. The belief isn't true, but your perception makes it feel real. The paradox of perception challenges you to see that the world doesn't exist in absolutes. What you see isn't the whole truth. It's a version of the truth filtered through your mind. And that's liberating because it means you have the power to change it. So, how do you begin? Start by paying attention to what you notice most. Are you focused on problems or possibilities, conflict or connection? Then ask yourself, what belief is driving this perception? Challenge it gently. Experiment with seeing things differently, even if it feels unnatural at first. The paradox also teaches the power of gratitude. When you focus on what's good, no matter how small, you start to see more of it. Gratitude isn't just about appreciating what's there. It's about training your mind to notice the beauty and abundance that might otherwise fade into the background. The paradox of perception reminds us that reality isn't fixed. It's fluid, shaped by the interplay of belief and observation. Changing your beliefs can feel uncomfortable, even scary, but it's the first step toward transforming how you experience the world. Your perception isn't a prison, it's a canvas, and The more you understand this paradox, the more you realize you hold the brush. By choosing your beliefs carefully and challenging the ones that no longer serve you, you can create a reality that reflects the life you truly want to live. The paradox of social comparison. You scroll through your phone, and there it is. Someone's perfect vacation, flawless outfit, or seemingly effortless success. In that moment, you can't help but compare. You wonder why you're not as accomplished, as attractive, or as happy as they seem to be. But here's where the paradox begins. While comparing yourself to others can spark ambition and drive, it can just as easily erode your self-esteem, leaving you feeling inadequate and defeated. This is the paradox of social comparison. It has the power to inspire and to destroy, depending on how you approach it. On the surface, comparison seems harmless, even useful. Seeing someone achieve something you want can light a fire under you. Their success can become a model, a proof that what you aspire to is possible. You think, if they can do it, so can I. In its healthiest form, comparison can motivate you to grow, to push yourself, to strive for something greater. But here's where it turns toxic. When you compare yourself to others, you rarely see the full picture. You see the curated highlight reel of their lives, the polished photos, the achievements, the smiles, but not the struggles, the failures, or the sacrifices it took to get there. And yet, you hold that incomplete image up against your messy, unfiltered reality. It's a losing battle. Imagine comparing a seed to a tree. The seed feels inadequate because it isn't tall or full of leaves, but it's not supposed to be. It's still growing. The tree had its time as a seed too, but you don't see that part of its journey. Comparing yourself to someone at a completely different stage of life or growth is just as unfair. The paradox deepens when you realize that comparison often blinds you to your own strengths. You're so focused on what others have that you lose sight of what you've already accomplished. The friend with the dream job might envy your close-knit family. The person with the perfect relationship might long for the freedom you take for granted. Comparison narrows your perspective, making you overlook the uniqueness of your own path. And then there's the darker side, envy. When comparison morphs into envy, it doesn't just harm your self-esteem, it poisons your ability to connect with others. Instead of celebrating someone's success, you resent it. Instead of being inspired, you feel defeated. Envy turns potential allies into rivals, isolating you from the very people who could uplift and support you. So, what can you do? How do you navigate the paradox of social comparison without falling into its traps? First, remember this truth. Your journey is yours alone. No one else has your exact circumstances, experiences, or goals. Comparing yourself to someone else is like comparing apples to oranges. It's pointless because the two were never meant to be the same. Second, shift your focus inward. Instead of asking, how do I measure up to them? Ask, how do I measure up to who I was yesterday? Growth isn't about being better than someone else. It's about being better than you used to be. Third, practice gratitude. When you feel the pull of comparison, take a moment to list the things you're grateful for in your own life. Gratitude shifts your focus from what you lack to what you already have, breaking the cycle of envy and self-doubt. And finally, use comparison wisely. If someone's success inspires you, let it fuel your ambition. But if it leaves you feeling inadequate, step back and remind yourself that their path is not yours. You don't need to follow their timeline or replicate their achievements to find fulfillment. The paradox of social comparison reveals a powerful lesson. Looking outward for validation will always leave you feeling incomplete. True peace comes from looking inward, from valuing your unique journey and celebrating the progress you've made. So the next time you find yourself comparing, pause. Ask yourself, is this helping me grow or is it holding me back? Remember that the only person you're truly in competition with is yourself. Your path is yours to walk, and no one else's success or struggle can define what that path should look like. In the end, the paradox teaches us that comparison can be both a teacher and a thief. It can push you toward greatness or pull you into despair. The choice lies in how you use it. Focus on your own growth, and you'll find that what once felt like a race against others was always meant to be a journey of self-discovery. The paradox of independence. You tell yourself, I need to handle this on my own. Whether it's a challenge at work, an emotional struggle, or a personal goal, you see self-reliance as the ultimate sign of strength. Independence, after all, means standing on your own 2 feet, needing no one else. But here's the paradox. The more you try to do everything alone, the more limited you become. True independence isn't about isolation. It's about learning to rely on others. This is the paradox of independence. Real strength lies in interdependence, not in standing apart from everyone else. Think of a tree. Its branches stretch high and wide, seemingly self-sufficient. But its strength doesn't come from its solitary nature. It comes from its roots, deeply intertwined with the soil. It draws nourishment from its surroundings, relying on the ecosystem to thrive. Without that connection, the tree wouldn't stand a chance. You're no different. The idea of independence as isolation is seductive. It feels empowering to believe you can handle anything on your own. Society even glorifies the lone wolf, the self-made person, the image of someone who succeeded without needing anyone else. But this ideal is a myth. No one truly achieves independence without help. Every success story is built on invisible scaffolding. Mentors, friends, family, colleagues, or even strangers who played a role along the way. Now think about the times you've tried to tackle something entirely on your own. Maybe you avoided asking for help because you didn't want to appear weak. Or maybe you told yourself no one else would understand or could do it as well as you. How did that feel? Exhausting, wasn't it? And the burden of doing everything alone didn't just drain your energy, it limited your potential. Here's where the paradox deepens. When you lean on others, you don't lose independence, you expand it. Relying on someone else for support doesn't make you weak. It allows you to reach further than you could alone. Imagine trying to lift a heavy object. Alone, you might manage a few inches, but with someone else's help, you can move it completely. Their strength amplifies yours. Interdependence isn't about dependence. It's about collaboration. It's recognizing that no one person has all the answers, all the skills, or all the perspective needed to navigate life. True independence comes from knowing when to stand alone and when to lean on others. This paradox also challenges the fear of vulnerability. Asking for help feels risky because it exposes you. You worry about being judged or seen as incapable, but in reality, asking for help builds trust. It signals to others that you value their input, that you see them as capable and important. This creates stronger connections, which, paradoxically, make you more resilient and independent in the long run. Think about the strongest relationships in your life. Are they built on never needing anything from each other? Or are they built on mutual support, giving and receiving in a way that strengthens both of you? Interdependence doesn't just make you stronger, it also makes you wiser. When you collaborate with others, you gain perspectives you wouldn't have seen on your own. Their insights, experiences, and ideas become part of your growth. In isolation, your perspective is limited. In connection, it expands. But let's address the fear. Doesn't relying on others open the door to disappointment? Yes, it does. People aren't perfect. They might let you down, misunderstand you, or fail to meet your expectations. But that's part of the paradox, too. Learning to navigate those moments is what makes you truly independent. It teaches you resilience, boundaries, and the ability to discern who's worth relying on. So how do you embrace the paradox of independence? Start small. Ask for help on a task you're struggling with. Share a concern with a trusted friend. Collaborate on a project instead of trying to do it all yourself. Notice how these small acts of interdependence don't weaken you. They strengthen you. The paradox also invites you to redefine independence. It's not about doing everything alone. It's about having the confidence to stand alone when needed and the humility to lean on others when necessary. True independence isn't isolation. It's knowing you're never truly alone. The paradox of independence reminds us that strength doesn't come from closing ourselves off. It comes from opening ourselves up to support, to connection, to the richness of shared experience. The more you embrace interdependence, the more independent you become. Because in the end, the strongest people aren't those who never ask for help. They're the ones who know they don't have to. The motivation paradox. You sit there, waiting for motivation to strike. Maybe it's a project you've been putting off, a workout you know you need to do, or a dream you've been meaning to chase. You tell yourself, I'll start when I feel motivated. But the motivation doesn't come, and the task remains untouched. This is the motivation paradox. We think motivation comes first, that we need to feel inspired before we act. But the truth is the opposite. Motivation often follows action, not the other way around. Think about the last time you didn't feel like doing something, but you pushed yourself to start anyway. Maybe you didn't want to go for a run, but you laced up your shoes and stepped outside. Or you dreaded tackling a work task, but you opened your laptop and began typing. What happened once you started? Momentum took over. The initial resistance faded, and suddenly the task didn't feel so impossible. That's the paradox at work. Action creates momentum, and momentum fuels motivation. But here's the catch. Waiting for motivation keeps you stuck. If you rely on feelings to get started, you might never begin. Imagine a car at a complete stop. It takes more energy to get it moving than to keep it rolling. Once it's in motion, momentum carries it forward with far less effort. Your actions work the same way. The hardest part is starting, but once you take that first step, the effort required to continue decreases dramatically. The paradox reveals why so many people feel stuck. They wait for a spark of motivation, believing it's the key to unlocking their potential. But motivation is fleeting, unreliable. If you depend on it, you'll spend more time waiting than doing. Think of an artist staring at a blank canvas. The fear of starting, of making the first mark, can feel paralyzing. But as soon as the brush touches the canvas, the fear starts to dissolve. Each stroke leads to another, and before long, the piece begins to take shape. Creativity doesn't flow from waiting for inspiration. It flows from the act of creating. This paradox also teaches us that discipline is more powerful than motivation. Discipline says, I'll start, no matter how I feel. And in starting, you unlock the very thing you were waiting for, the motivation to keep going. But why does motivation follow action? Because action changes your state. When you move, your brain shifts focus. Small wins, like completing the first few minutes of a task, release dopamine, the chemical associated with pleasure and reward. That dopamine reinforces your effort, making you want to continue. Starting doesn't just create momentum, it rewires your brain to feel motivated. Now think about what happens when you wait for motivation instead. The task looms larger, your mind fills with excuses, and the inertia of doing nothing grows stronger. Waiting turns a molehill into a mountain, making it even harder to start. The paradox also explains why so many successful people credit their achievements to habits, not motivation. Habits remove the need for inspiration because they automate action. You don't wait to feel motivated to brush your teeth or eat breakfast. You just do it. By turning important actions into habits, you bypass the motivation trap entirely. So how do you harness the motivation paradox? Start small. If the task feels overwhelming, break it down into tiny, manageable steps. Don't focus on writing a novel. Focus on writing one sentence. Don't think about running 5 miles. Focus on tying your shoes and stepping outside. The smaller the action, the easier it is to start. And here's the beauty of the paradox. You don't have to feel ready. You just have to begin. The motivation you're waiting for is already within you, dormant, waiting to be unlocked by action. The motivation. Paradox teaches us a powerful lesson. You don't need to feel motivated to act, but you do need to act to feel motivated. Waiting for inspiration is a trap that keeps you stuck. Starting, even imperfectly, is the way forward. So, the next time you feel unmotivated, don't wait for the spark. Be the spark. Take one small step, no matter how insignificant it seems, because once you're in motion, the motivation you thought you needed will catch up to you. And that's when the real momentum begins. The paradox of expectations. You picture it vividly in your mind, the perfect trip, the flawless dinner, the ideal outcome. You set your expectations high, thinking that aiming for the best will make it more likely to happen. But when the moment arrives, even if it's good, it doesn't quite measure up to the image you built in your head. You feel a twinge of disappointment, even when there's no real reason to. This is the paradox of expectations. The higher your expectations, the more likely you are to feel let down, even if the reality isn't bad. Expectations have a strange way of creating invisible benchmarks for happiness. You tell yourself, I'll be happy if this turns out exactly how I've imagined. But the problem is, life rarely follows the script you write in your mind. Even when things go well, they might not match the vision you built, leaving you feeling that something is missing. Think about the last time you hyped something up in your head, a long-awaited event, a movie, or even a conversation. Maybe it was good, maybe even great, but it didn't feel as good as you thought it would. That subtle gap between Expectation and reality creates a sense of dissatisfaction, not because the experience failed, but because your mind had already decided what success should look like. The paradox lies in this: the more you cling to expectations, the more you rob yourself of the ability to appreciate what's in front of you. Your focus shifts from the present moment to a mental comparison of what could have been. And no matter how wonderful reality is, it struggles to compete with the perfection you imagined. Expectations, when set too high, create a trap. They don't just set you up for potential disappointment, they make it harder to notice and enjoy the unexpected joys that life often offers. Imagine expecting a 5-star meal and receiving a perfectly delicious 4-star one. Instead of savoring the flavors, you're stuck thinking about the one missing star. But here's the twist: expectations aren't inherently bad. They can motivate you, give you direction, and push you toward growth. The problem arises when expectations become rigid, when they leave no room for the imperfections and surprises that make life real. Now, consider the opposite: the times when you walked into a situation with little or no expectations. Maybe it was a spontaneous trip, an unplanned evening, or an encounter with someone new. Without a mental script, you were free to experience things as they were, not as you thought they should be. And because of that, you likely found more joy and satisfaction in the moment. The paradox of expectations also reveals a deeper truth about control. Expectations are a way of trying to shape the future, to predict and control outcomes, but life doesn't work that way. The tighter you hold onto your expectations, the more resistance you create against life's natural flow. So how do you navigate this paradox? Start by softening your expectations. Instead of fixating on a specific outcome, focus on the effort you put in or the experience itself. Shift your mindset from, "I'll be happy if this happens," to, "I'll enjoy what unfolds, no matter what." This doesn't mean giving up on your standards or goals. It means approaching them with flexibility, allowing room for life's imperfections. High expectations don't have to disappear, but they should leave space for gratitude and acceptance. The paradox also invites you to cultivate curiosity over judgment. When things don't go as planned, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? What unexpected good might come from this detour? By shifting your focus, you transform disappointment into discovery. The paradox of expectations teaches us a profound lesson. Happiness isn't about reality matching your mental script. It's about appreciating what reality brings, even when it surprises you. So the next time you find yourself building up an event, a person, or an outcome in your mind, pause. Ask yourself, am I leaving room for life to be imperfect? Because true joy doesn't come from everything going perfectly. It comes from embracing life exactly as it is, flaws and all. In the end, the paradox reminds us that expectations can either limit or liberate us. The choice lies not in lowering them, but in holding them lightly, with enough space to let life surprise us in ways we never could have imagined. The paradox of control in relationships. You want the best for them, your partner, your friend, your child. You want them to make good decisions, to avoid mistakes, to act in ways that strengthen your bond. So you try to guide them, maybe subtly at first, then more firmly. You think, if I can steer things, everything will turn out better. But instead of bringing them closer, you feel them pulling away. This is the paradox of control in relationships. The more you try to control someone, the more distance you create. True connection isn't built on control, it's built on trust, respect, and allowing people to be fully themselves. Control feels like love sometimes. You tell yourself, I'm doing this for them, to protect them, to help them grow. But what it often communicates is something deeper. I don't trust you to be who you are. I don't trust you to figure this out. And that unspoken message, it erodes connection. Think of a bird in your hands. If you hold it too tightly, it struggles, desperate to escape. But if you hold it gently, with an open palm, it stays, free to move, but choosing to remain. People are the same. Control makes them feel trapped, while freedom makes them feel safe. Now, think about how control shows up in relationships. Maybe it's trying to manage your partner's habits, steer your friend's choices, or shape your child's personality to fit your vision. It often starts with good intentions, but the result is the same. The more you push, the more resistance you meet. The paradox lies in this. Control feels like the way to strengthen a relationship, but it actually weakens it. Connection thrives on autonomy, the freedom to be seen, accepted, and loved for who you truly are, not for who someone else wants you to be. But why is letting go so hard? Because control often masks fear, fear of losing someone, fear of their mistakes reflecting poorly on you, fear of vulnerability, the truth that you can't control another person's choices, no matter how much you care. Here's where the paradox deepens. Letting go of control doesn't mean indifference. It doesn't mean you stop caring or that you have no influence in the relationship. It means creating space for mutual respect where your influence is invited, not imposed. Think about a time when someone tried to control you. Maybe it was a parent micromanaging your decisions or a partner trying to mold you into their ideal version of love. How did it feel? Likely suffocating, frustrating, even dehumanizing. Now flip the script. When someone trusted you, believed in your ability to make your own choices, didn't try to fix or manage you, how did that feel? Probably freeing. That's the power of connection without control. The paradox of control in relationships also teaches us a powerful truth about love. Love isn't about possession. It's not about molding someone into what you want or keeping them in a box of your making. Love is about seeing someone as they are, not as you wish they'd be, and celebrating their individuality. Letting go of control doesn't mean letting go of boundaries. Boundaries are healthy. They protect your well-being and set the tone for how you want to be treated. Control, on the other hand, is about imposing your will on someone else. Boundaries say, this is what I need to feel respected. Control says, this is what you must do to meet my needs. The difference is subtle, but profound. So, how do you navigate this paradox? Start by asking yourself, why do I feel the need to control this person? Often, the answer lies in your own insecurities or fears, not their behavior. Work on addressing those within yourself rather than projecting them onto the relationship. Then, practice trust. Trust that the people you care about are capable of making their own choices. Trust that their mistakes are part of their growth, not a reflection of your failure, and trust that letting go of control doesn't mean losing them. It means allowing the relationship to grow in freedom. The paradox also invites you to focus on connection over correction. Instead of trying to change someone, listen to them. Instead of directing their actions, support their journey. When people feel truly seen and accepted, they're far more likely to stay close to you. The paradox of control in relationships reminds us that love is strongest when it's freely given and freely received. True connection doesn't come from managing others. It comes from allowing them to be fully themselves. The next time you feel the urge to control, pause. Ask yourself, am I acting from love or from fear? Am I creating space for connection or building walls of control? Because in the end, the relationships that thrive are the ones where freedom, trust, and mutual respect take center stage. And letting go of control might just be the most powerful way to hold on. The paradox of expertise. You start with curiosity, a spark of interest in something new. At first, every bit of knowledge feels like a revelation. You study, practice, and learn, thinking you're getting closer to mastery. But then, something strange happens. The deeper you dive, the more gaps you see. The field that once seemed straightforward now feels vast, complex, even infinite. This is the paradox of expertise. The more you know, the more you realize how much you don't know. Expertise doesn't shrink the unknown. It magnifies it. When you're a beginner, everything seems clear. You learn the basics, and the boundaries of your understanding feel manageable. It's comforting, even empowering, to think you're close to figuring it all out. But with time and experience, you begin to uncover layers of nuance and complexity. Questions you didn't know to ask start to surface, and suddenly, the limits of your knowledge become glaringly obvious. Imagine standing at the edge of a forest. As a novice, you only see the first row of trees and think, this is it. But as you venture deeper, the forest stretches endlessly in every direction. Expertise is like that. The more ground you cover, the larger the terrain seems to grow. The paradox lies in this. Gaining knowledge should make you feel more certain, but it often does the opposite. Expertise doesn't just teach you answers, it teaches you the limits of those answers. It reveals the gray areas, the exceptions, the questions that remain unresolved. And in doing so, it replaces the confidence of a beginner with the humility of someone who understands just how much there is to learn. This is why true experts are often the most humble. They've seen enough of the forest to know they'll never explore it all. It's not that they doubt their abilities, it's that they've gained a profound respect for the complexity of their field. Now contrast this with the beginner who feels overly confident. They've learned just enough to think they have it all figured out. Psychologists call this the Dunning-Kruger effect, where people with limited knowledge overestimate their competence. The paradox of expertise flips this on its head. As you become more knowledgeable, your confidence softens, tempered by awareness of your limitations. But this paradox isn't discouraging, it's liberating. Realizing how much you don't know opens the door to endless growth. It frees you from the illusion of perfection and allows you to approach your field with curiosity rather than ego. Instead of feeling pressured to have all the answers, you learn to ask better questions. Think of the greatest minds in history, scientists, artists, philosophers. Their breakthroughs didn't come from pretending they knew it all. They came from embracing the unknown. Einstein famously said, "The more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know." This humility didn't diminish his genius. It fueled it. The paradox of expertise also teaches us that mastery isn't about reaching an endpoint. It's about engaging in a lifelong process of learning, questioning, and evolving. The moment you think you've arrived is the moment you stop growing. But here's the challenge. The more you know, the harder it can be to communicate what you know. Experts often struggle to explain their insights to beginners because they see the complexity of every question. Meanwhile, beginners crave simple answers, not realizing how much nuance they're missing. This disconnect can create frustration, but it also highlights the value of teaching. Teaching forces experts to simplify without oversimplifying, bridging the gap between what they know and what others can understand. It's why the best teachers aren't just knowledgeable, they're deeply empathetic. So, how do you navigate the paradox of expertise without feeling overwhelmed by all you don't know? Start by embracing humility. Accept that no matter how much you learn, there will always be more to discover. Instead of chasing mastery as an endpoint, see it as a journey. Second, focus on curiosity over certainty. Expertise isn't about having all the answers. It's about knowing which questions to ask and being open to the possibility that your answers might change. And finally, find joy in the process. The vastness of what you don't know isn't a burden. It's an invitation. Every gap in your knowledge is an opportunity to explore, to grow, to see the world in a new way. The paradox of expertise reminds us that true mastery isn't about knowing it all. It's about understanding how much there is to learn. The deeper you go, the more infinite the horizon becomes. And while you may never reach the edge, the journey itself is where the magic happens. The paradox of confidence and humility. You think confidence means having all the answers, standing tall, and never showing doubt. The confident person in your mind is the one who walks into a room and commands attention with certainty and authority. But here's the twist. True confidence doesn't come from pretending to know everything. It comes from admitting what you don't know. This is the paradox of confidence and humility. The more humble you are, the more confident you appear. It's not arrogance or bravado that inspires trust. It's the quiet assurance of someone who knows their limits and isn't afraid to say so. Imagine sitting in a meeting and someone speaks with absolute certainty about a topic they clearly don't fully understand. Their confidence feels hollow, forced. Now, imagine someone else admits, "I don't have all the answers, but here's what I do know, and I'm willing to learn." Which person earns your respect? It's the second, isn't it? Because humility feels authentic, and authenticity is magnetic. The paradox lies in this simple truth. People trust confidence when it's grounded in reality. When you acknowledge your gaps in knowledge, you show that you're secure enough in yourself to be honest. That kind of confidence doesn't need to shout. It speaks softly, but carries immense weight. Humility isn't weakness. It's strength disguised as modesty. It takes courage to admit you don't know something, especially in a world that prizes certainty and quick answers. But here's the beauty of the paradox. When you're honest about your limitations, you create space for growth. You open yourself to new ideas, perspectives, and opportunities to learn. Think about the most confident people you admire. Are they the ones who act like they have all the answers? Or are they the ones who listen more than they speak, who ask questions and admit when they're unsure? True confidence doesn't come from trying to appear perfect. It comes from being comfortable with imperfection. The paradox of confidence and humility also teaches us an important lesson about influence. When you admit what you don't know, you invite collaboration. You signal to others that their input is valuable, that you're not too proud to learn from them. This doesn't diminish your authority. It enhances it. People are far more likely to trust and follow someone who listens and learns than someone who pretends to have all the answers. But here's where the paradox deepens. Confidence and humility aren't opposites. They're two sides of the same coin. True confidence is built on a foundation of humility, while true humility requires the quiet confidence to say, I'm enough as I am, even if I don't know everything. Think of a skilled athlete. They're confident in their abilities, but they also know they can always improve. They listen to their coach, take feedback, and recognize their weaknesses. It's their humility that drives their growth, and their confidence that allows them to step onto the field and perform. The same is true in any area of life. Confidence without humility becomes arrogance, fragile and easily shattered. Humility without confidence becomes insecurity, paralyzing, and self-defeating. But when the two work together, they create something powerful, the ability to lead, learn, and inspire without losing sight of your humanity. So, how do you embody this paradox? Start by shifting your mindset. Instead of seeing humility as admitting weakness, see it as a strength. When you say, I don't know, you're not diminishing yourself. You're demonstrating self-awareness. Next, practice curiosity. Confidence doesn't mean having all the answers. It means being willing to ask the right questions. The more curious you are, the more you learn, and the more confident you become in your ability to navigate the unknown. Trust in your inherent worth. Confidence rooted in humility isn't about proving yourself to others. It's about knowing you have value, even when you don't have all the answers. That kind of confidence is unshakable because it's not built on external validation. It's built on self-acceptance. The paradox of confidence and humility reminds us that strength lies not in pretending, but in being real. Admitting what you don't know isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of wisdom. True confidence isn't about always being right. It's about being open, honest, and unafraid to grow. So the next time you feel pressure to project certainty, pause. Ask yourself, am I trying to impress or am I trying to connect? Because the most confident people aren't those who demand attention. They're the ones who inspire trust through their quiet, grounded humility. And in that balance, confidence and humility become one. The paradox of generosity. You give a little of your time, your money, your energy. Maybe it's to a friend in need, a stranger on the street, or a cause close to your heart. Logic tells you that giving means losing something. It's a subtraction, a sacrifice. But here's the paradox. The more you give, the richer you feel. Generosity doesn't deplete you. It fills you. This is the paradox of generosity. When you give to others, you gain something far greater in return. It creates a sense of abundance that no amount of hoarding or self-preservation can match. Think about the last time you helped someone. Maybe you bought a meal for someone who was hungry, spent an afternoon volunteering, or simply lent a listening ear to a friend. Did you walk away feeling poorer? Or did you feel a quiet satisfaction, a warmth that made your day a little brighter? That's the paradox at work. Generosity shifts your perspective. It moves your focus from what do I lack to what can I give. And in that shift, something magical happens. You stop seeing the world as a place of scarcity and start seeing it as a place of possibility. But why does this happen? Because generosity isn't just about what you give. It's about what it creates. When you help someone, you create connection, gratitude, and trust. These aren't material things, but they're deeply valuable. They enrich your life in ways money or possessions never could. Imagine two people. One clings tightly to their resources, afraid to share, worried there won't be enough. The other gives freely, trusting that what they give will come back in some form. Who do you think feels more abundant? The paradox lies in this. The person who gives feels wealthier, even if they technically have less. Generosity also builds a sense of purpose. When you give, you're reminded that your actions matter, that you can make a difference in someone else's life. That sense of purpose isn't just fulfilling, it's transformative. It turns even small acts of kindness into powerful moments of connection and meaning. And here's the twist. Generosity doesn't just create emotional abundance, it often creates material abundance too. When you give your time, skills, or resources, you build relationships and goodwill. You create a network of people who are more likely to help you in return. It's not a transaction, it's a ripple effect. But the paradox also challenges something deeper, our fear of loss. The instinct to hold on tightly to what we have runs deep. We worry that if we give too much, we'll have nothing left. But generosity teaches the opposite. The more you give, the more you realize you already have enough. Think about the people who inspire you most. Are they the ones who hoard their time, money, or talents? Or are they the ones who share freely, lifting others up along the way? Generosity is magnetic. It draws people to you not because they want to take, but because they're inspired by your openness. But let's be clear, generosity isn't about giving recklessly or to the point of harming yourself. The paradox doesn't mean depleting your resources to prove a point. It means recognizing that sharing what you can, whether it's a little or a lot, creates more than it takes away. So, how do you embrace the paradox of generosity? Start small. Give what feels manageable, a compliment, a bit of your time, a small donation. Notice how it makes you feel. Then, let that feeling guide you to give more, not out of obligation, but out of joy. Generosity also invites you to look beyond material wealth. Time, attention, kindness. These are gifts that cost nothing but mean everything. Sometimes, the most generous thing you can do is simply show up for someone, fully present and without expectation. The paradox teaches us that giving isn't about losing, it's about creating. Every act of generosity plants a seed, and over time, those seeds grow into something far bigger than you could have imagined. The next time you hesitate to give, ask yourself, what am I really holding on to? Because the more you share, the more you realize that true wealth isn't what you keep, it's what you give away. The paradox of generosity reminds us that abundance isn't about accumulation, it's about flow. When you let generosity guide you, you discover a richness that can't be measured in possessions or bank accounts. You find connection, purpose, and a sense of fulfillment that only grows the more you share. And in that giving, you create a world that feels not only kinder, but infinitely more abundant. The paradox of focus. You sit down to work, determined to concentrate. You push everything else aside, furrow your brow, and tell yourself, I must focus. But the harder you try, the more your mind rebels. Distractions creep in, thoughts of unfinished tasks, random memories, even the urge to check your phone. The more effort you put into focusing, the harder it becomes. This is the paradox of focus. Trying too hard to concentrate often backfires, while relaxation and mindfulness make focus come naturally. Think about it. When you force your mind to focus, you're creating tension. That tension, rather than sharpening your attention, divides it. It's like gripping sand in your hand. The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips through your fingers. True focus, on the other hand, isn't forced. It flows. Now recall a moment when you were deeply absorbed in something, a book, a conversation, a hobby you love. You weren't straining to focus. You were simply immersed. That's the kind of effortless focus that arises when your mind is calm and your attention is engaged naturally, not through force. The paradox lies in this. Focus isn't about controlling your mind. It's about letting your mind settle. When you try to force concentration, you magnify distractions. But when you approach your task with relaxation and presence, your mind becomes quiet, like a still lake reflecting the world around it. Imagine trying to tame a restless dog by pulling on its leash. The more you tug, the more it resists, pulling harder in the opposite direction. But if you loosen your grip and let it calm down on its own, the dog eventually settles. Your mind works the same way. The more you try to wrestle it into submission, the more chaotic it becomes. The paradox of focus also reveals why multitasking feels so tempting. When you can't focus on one thing, your mind jumps to another, thinking it can accomplish more by scattering its attention. But this only amplifies the problem. True focus requires presence, being fully engaged with one thing at a time. So how do you navigate this paradox? Start by embracing mindfulness. Instead of forcing your mind to concentrate, guide it gently. Take a few deep breaths before starting a task. Ground yourself in the present moment. When your mind wanders, and it will, bring it back without judgment. The goal isn't perfection, it's practice. Relaxation is another key. Tension and focus don't mix. If your body is tight, your mind will follow. Create an environment that feels calm and supportive. A comfortable chair, soft lighting, a clear workspace. Give yourself permission to approach the task with ease rather than strain. The paradox also teaches us the value of breaks. Focus isn't sustainable when it's pushed too hard. The brain needs rest to recharge. Short, intentional pauses can do wonders for your concentration. Step away from your work, take a walk, or practice a quick meditation. When you return, your focus will feel more natural and less forced. It's also important to simplify. The harder you try to focus on too many things at once, the harder it becomes to focus on anything. Prioritize. Choose one task, one goal, one moment, and give it your full attention. The rest can wait. The paradox of focus reminds us that concentration isn't about willpower. It's about alignment. When your mind, body, and environment are in harmony, focus happens effortlessly. But when you push too hard, you create resistance, making the very thing you're trying to achieve harder to grasp. So the next time you find yourself struggling to concentrate, pause. Take a step back. Ask yourself, am I trying too hard? Let go of the tension, return to the present, and allow focus to find you. In the end, the paradox teaches us that focus is less about control and more about flow. It's about creating the conditions for your mind to engage naturally without force or frustration. When you embrace this approach, you'll discover that focus isn't something you chase, it's something you allow. And in that space of ease, your attention becomes sharper, your work more meaningful, and your mind infinitely clearer. The paradox of self-awareness. You start a journey inward, peeling back the layers of who you are. You question your thoughts, analyze your behavior, and search for meaning in your emotions. Over time, you gain clarity, a deeper understanding of what drives you, what fulfills you, and what holds you back. But then something unexpected happens. The more you know yourself, the more you feel separate from others. This is the paradox of self-awareness. The deeper your self-understanding, the more alienated you might feel from those who don't share that level of introspection. At first, self-awareness feels empowering. You see yourself more clearly, uncovering patterns and motivations that were once hidden. It feels like you're waking up, finally understanding why you are the way you are. But with that clarity comes complexity. You begin to notice the things others might not see, their unexamined habits, their assumptions, their blind spots. This new perspective can create a subtle, yet powerful sense of distance. You realize that not everyone thinks as deeply or questions as much as you do. Conversations that once felt engaging now feel shallow. Relationships that used to fulfill you might start to feel mismatched, as if you're no longer on the same wavelength. The paradox lies in this. Self-awareness is meant to bring you closer to others, to improve your connections and deepen your empathy, but it can also make you feel separate, as though the more you understand yourself, the less others understand you. Think about it like climbing a mountain. As you ascend, your view expands. You see things from a broader perspective, patterns, landscapes, connections you couldn't see at the bottom. But when you look around, you notice that fewer people are standing beside you. The climb towards self-awareness often feels solitary, even isolating. This sense of distance isn't inherently bad, but it's uncomfortable. You might start to wonder, why doesn't anyone else see things this way? Am I the problem? Are they? The truth is neither. Self-awareness simply changes the lens through which you see the world, and not everyone is looking through the same lens. But here's the twist. This very distance can become a bridge if you let it. The more you understand yourself, the more you're able to understand others. You see their struggles, their insecurities, and their blind spots. Not with judgment, but with compassion. You recognize that everyone is on their own journey, even if they're at a different point on the path. The paradox of self-awareness also teaches us that understanding yourself doesn't mean isolating yourself. It's easy to retreat inward, to focus so much on your own growth that you forget the value of connection. But self-awareness is most powerful when it's shared, when you use what you've learned to build empathy, strengthen relationships, and guide others on their journeys. However, the paradox also reveals a painful truth. Not every relationship will survive your self-awareness. As you grow, you may outgrow certain dynamics, friendships, or connections that no longer align with who you've become. This can feel like a loss, but it's also a sign of evolution. Letting go creates space for relationships that reflect the deeper understanding you've gained. So, how do you navigate the paradox of self-awareness? Start by embracing the discomfort. Recognize that feeling alienated isn't a failure, it's a natural part of the process. Growth often feels lonely before it feels liberating. Next, use your self-awareness as a tool for connection, not separation. Share your insights with others, not to impose your perspective, but to invite deeper understanding. Ask questions. Listen. Be curious about their experiences, even if they're different from your own. The paradox also reminds us to stay humble. Self-awareness doesn't mean you have all the answers. It means you're willing to keep asking questions. The more you understand yourself, the more you realize how much there is to learn, not just about you, but about everyone around you. Remember that self-awareness is a journey, not a destination. It's not about reaching a point where you're perfectly understood or perfectly alone. It's about navigating the ever-changing balance between connection and introspection. The paradox of self-awareness teaches us that understanding yourself deeply can feel isolating, but it also opens the door to richer, more meaningful relationships. The distance you feel isn't a wall. It's an invitation to build bridges, to connect in ways that are more authentic and true. In the end, self-awareness isn't about standing apart. It's about seeing yourself clearly so you can see others more clearly too. And in that clarity, you'll find that the connections you do build, though fewer, are infinitely deeper and more fulfilling than you ever imagined. The paradox of failure. Failure strikes like a sudden storm. Your plans unravel, your confidence wavers, and you're left wondering, was it all for nothing? In the moment, failure feels final, like the door has closed and locked behind you. But here's the paradox. Failure isn't an ending. It's often the beginning. This is the paradox of failure. What feels like a setback is actually the foundation for transformation. The lessons hidden within failure often lead to the greatest growth, but only if you're willing to face them. Think about a time you failed. Maybe it was a project that didn't pan out, a goal you didn't reach, or a relationship that fell apart. In the aftermath, it probably felt like everything was falling apart. You might have even told yourself, I'm not good enough, or I'll never succeed. But now, looking back, can you see how that failure shaped you? The resilience you built? The clarity you gained? The lessons you learned? The paradox lies in this. Failure feels like it's tearing you down, but in reality, it's building you up in ways you can't yet see. Failure forces you to confront your limits, to see what's not working, and to adapt. It strips away illusions and makes you ask the hard questions. What went wrong? What can I do differently? What do I truly want? These moments of reckoning are uncomfortable, but they're also where growth begins. Imagine a seed planted in the soil. At first glance, it looks buried, even lost, but that burial isn't the end. It's the start of transformation. The seed must crack open, break apart, and push through the dirt to grow. Failure works the same way. It breaks you open, forcing you to shed what no longer serves you so you can grow into something stronger. But here's the catch. Failure only leads to growth if you're willing to engage with it. Avoiding failure, ignoring it, or blaming others robs you of its transformative power. To grow, you have to face failure head-on, with curiosity instead of judgment. The paradox of failure also teaches us that success and failure are not opposites. They're intertwined. Every great success story is built on a foundation of failure. Think of the entrepreneur whose business ideas flopped before they struck gold. The artist whose early work was rejected time and time again. The athlete who lost more games than they won before they became a champion. Failure wasn't the end of their journey. It was an essential part of it. And yet failure feels so personal. It whispers, "You're not enough." But the truth is, failure isn't about you. It's about the process. It's feedback, not a verdict. It's a sign that something didn't work, not that you didn't work. The paradox deepens when you realize that avoiding failure is often more damaging than failing itself. Fear of failure keeps you stuck, afraid to take risks, to try, to grow. But when you embrace failure, you free yourself from that fear. You learn that failure isn't fatal. It's just another step on the path to success. So, how do you navigate the paradox of failure? Start by reframing it. Instead of seeing failure as a sign of inadequacy, see it as an opportunity to learn. Ask yourself, what can this teach me? How can I use this to grow? Next, detach failure from your identity. Failing at something doesn't make you a failure. It makes you human. Every time you fall short, remind yourself that failure is an event, not a definition. The paradox also invites you to embrace experimentation. Treat life like a series of trials, not a single test. Each failure is a data point, guiding you closer to what works. The more you fail, the more you learn, and the closer you get to success. Find gratitude for failure. This might sound strange, but failure has a way of revealing what truly matters. It sharpens your focus, strengthens your resolve, and often points you in a better direction than the one you were heading toward. The paradox of failure teaches us that the end of one path is often the beginning of another. It reminds us that growth isn't linear. It's messy, painful, and full of detours. But those detours are where the magic happens. So the next time you fail, pause. Instead of asking, why me? Ask, what's next? Look for the lesson, embrace the discomfort, and trust that failure isn't pulling you down. It's pushing you forward. In the end, the paradox reveals that failure isn't the opposite of success. It's the foundation of it. And the strength, wisdom, and growth you gain from failure, those are victories no success can ever take away. The paradox of stress. Stress. It's the weight on your chest before a big presentation, the tightness in your shoulders during a chaotic day, the restless thoughts that keep you awake at night. You might think, if only I could get rid of stress, everything would be fine. But here's the twist. Stress isn't your enemy. In fact, some stress is necessary for growth. The paradox is that while a certain amount of stress propels you forward, too much can overwhelm and break you. Why? This is the paradox of stress. It's both a force for growth and a potential destroyer. The key lies in learning how to harness it without letting it consume you. Think about a time when stress helped you succeed. Maybe it was a tight deadline that pushed you to focus, or a challenge that motivated you to dig deep and prove what you were capable of. That kind of stress, often called eustress, is energizing. It sharpens your mind, heightens your senses, and gives you the drive to take action. It's the spark that ignites growth. But when stress becomes chronic, when the weight doesn't let up, it stops being helpful. Instead of driving you forward, it grinds you down. Your mind feels scattered, your body aches, and even the simplest tasks seem insurmountable. This is the tipping point where stress shifts from productive to destructive. The paradox lies in the balance. Too little stress, and you stagnate. You become complacent, unchallenged, and bored. Too much stress, and you burn out, losing the energy and clarity to move forward. Growth happens in the sweet spot between these extremes, the place where stress stretches you without breaking you. Imagine a muscle during exercise. To grow stronger, it needs stress, the tension of weights, the strain of movement. But if you overdo it, pushing too hard or lifting too much, the muscle tears and fails to recover. Your mind and body work the same way. They thrive under manageable pressure, but falter under relentless strain. The paradox of stress also teaches us that stress itself isn't the real problem. It's how we respond to it. Two people can face the same stressful situation, yet experience it completely differently. One might see it as a challenge to overcome, while the other sees it as an insurmountable obstacle. The difference lies in perception. When you see stress as a challenge, you activate your problem-solving mindset. You focus on what you can control, breaking the situation into manageable steps. But when you see stress as a threat, it triggers fear and overwhelm, making you feel powerless. The key to navigating stress lies in shifting your mindset from threat to challenge. Another layer of the paradox is how stress often stems from the things we care about most. You're stressed about your job because you want to succeed. You're stressed about your family because you love them deeply. Stress in this way is a sign that something matters to you. The goal isn't to eliminate it, but to manage it in a way that honors its purpose without letting it take over. So, how do you harness stress without being consumed by it? Start by identifying the source. Ask yourself, is this stress coming from something I can control or something I can't? Focus your energy on what you can influence and let go of what's beyond your reach. Next, build habits that help you recover from stress. Just like muscles need rest after a workout, your mind and body need time to recharge. Regular sleep, exercise, mindfulness, and time spent in nature aren't luxuries. They're essential tools for keeping stress at a healthy level. The paradox also invites you to embrace discomfort. Growth requires stepping outside your comfort zone, which inevitably brings stress. Instead of avoiding it, lean into it. Let stress be your guide, showing you where the edges of your growth lie. But most importantly, learn to listen to your body and mind. Stress isn't silent. It speaks to you through tension, fatigue, and emotional outbursts. When you notice these signs, it's a signal to step back, reassess, and take care of yourself. The paradox of stress reminds us that growth and destruction are two sides of the same coin. Stress is a force that can shape you, but only if you learn to wield it wisely. So the next time you feel overwhelmed, pause. Ask yourself, is this stress helping me grow, or is it holding me back? If it's the former, lean into it with courage and determination. If it's the latter, take a step back, breathe, and find ways to lighten the load. In the end, stress isn't something to fear. It's something to understand. When you learn to balance it, to use it as a tool rather than a burden, you unlock the power to grow stronger, more resilient, and more in tune with yourself. And in that balance, you find not just growth, but peace. The paradox of time. You're in a hurry. Deadlines loom, tasks pile up, and you tell yourself, I need to move faster. You rush through your day, multitasking, cutting corners, and pushing yourself to squeeze every second out of the clock. But at the end of it all, you look back and wonder, where did the time go? This is the paradox of time. The more you try to save time by rushing, the more you waste fixing mistakes or recovering from burnout. True efficiency often comes from slowing down and focusing fully on the task at hand. Think about the last time you rushed to get something done. Maybe it was a project, a chore, or even a conversation. In your haste, you likely made errors, missteps that needed correcting, decisions that created more work, or misunderstandings that required clarification. What felt like saving time ended up costing you more in the long run. The paradox lies in this: rushing creates inefficiency. It scatters your attention, increases stress, and leads to shortcuts that compromise quality. Slowing down, on the other hand, feels counterintuitive, but often leads to faster progress. When you focus fully on one thing at a time, you make fewer mistakes, produce better results, and move forward with clarity. Imagine a chef in a bustling kitchen. The novice rushes, slicing vegetables quickly but unevenly, spilling ingredients, and forgetting steps in a recipe. The seasoned chef, however, works methodically: steady hands, deliberate movements, and unwavering focus. Who finishes faster? The one who slows down and works with intention. The paradox of time also reveals something deeper about how we view productivity. We equate busyness with accomplishment, thinking that the faster we move, the more we achieve. But busyness is often just a disguise for distraction. True progress comes not from doing more, but from doing what matters with care and precision. This paradox becomes even clearer when you think about decision-making. When you rush, you make snap judgments that often lead to poor outcomes. You don't take the time to gather all the information or weigh your options. But when you pause, reflect, and approach decisions with patience, you set yourself up for success. And yet, slowing down feels risky in a world that rewards speed. You worry that taking your time will make you fall behind, that others will outpace you while you're still deliberating. But the paradox teaches us that moving slower doesn't mean moving less. It means moving smarter. Think about walking through a dense forest. If you sprint, you're more likely to trip over roots, miss the beauty around you, and end up lost. If you walk deliberately, you notice the path, avoid obstacles, and reach your destination with confidence. The paradox of time also touches on the quality of your experiences. When you rush, you skim the surface of life. Conversations become hurried exchanges, meals are eaten mindlessly, and moments pass unnoticed. Slowing down allows you to savor life, to engage deeply, connect meaningfully, and truly appreciate what's in front of you. So how do you embrace the paradox of time? Start by prioritizing what matters. Not every task needs to be rushed, and not every moment needs to be optimized. Identify the few things that truly deserve your focus, and let the rest take a back seat. Next, practice single tasking. Multitasking feels productive, but it divides your attention and increases mistakes. Give your full presence to one task at a time, and you'll often find you complete it faster and better. The paradox also invites you to cultivate patience. When you feel the urge to rush, pause. Take a deep breath. Remind yourself that haste often leads to delay. Trust that steady progress will get you where you need to go. And finally, value rest as much as action. A rested mind is a sharp mind. Taking breaks, getting enough sleep, and allowing yourself moments of stillness aren't luxuries. They're necessities for working efficiently and living fully. The paradox of time teaches us that slowing down isn't about doing less. It's about doing better. It reminds us that speed without direction is just wasted energy, and that true productivity lies in deliberate, focused action. So the next time you feel rushed, ask yourself, am I moving with purpose or just moving fast? Because in the end, the fastest way to make progress isn't to rush, it's to slow down, focus, and let the rhythm of life guide you forward. And in that deliberate pace, you'll find not just efficiency, but clarity, peace, and a deeper appreciation for the time you have. The paradox of simplicity. You look at something simple, a clean design, a clear explanation, a straightforward plan, and think, that must have been easy to create. But here's the paradox. Simplicity is never easy. It takes far more effort to strip away the unnecessary, to refine and distill, than to pile on layers of complexity. This is the paradox of simplicity. Achieving simplicity requires thought, effort, and discipline, while complexity often happens by default. Think about a piece of writing. It's easy to ramble, to throw in every idea, every detail, every word that comes to mind, but crafting something concise, something that communicates exactly what it needs to, and nothing more, that's hard. It requires you to think deeply, to understand your message fully, and to make tough decisions about what to leave out. Or consider your living space. Clutter accumulates naturally. Papers on the counter, clothes on the floor, random objects tucked into drawers. It takes effort to declutter, to decide what's essential, and to create a space that feels clean and simple. The paradox lies in this. Simplicity feels effortless when you experience it, but it takes immense effort to create. It's the result of intentional choices, of subtracting rather than adding, of prioritizing clarity over convenience. Simplicity also challenges your comfort with letting go. Complexity often feels safe. It allows you to keep everything, to avoid decisions, to hold on to what doesn't serve you just in case. Simplicity, on the other hand, demands that you confront the question, what truly matters? It forces you to let go of what's unnecessary, even if doing so feels uncomfortable. Imagine a sculptor working on a block of marble. To create a masterpiece, they don't add material. They remove it. Each chip, each stroke, each decision is about subtraction. The beauty lies not in what's added, but in what's left behind. Simplicity is the same. It's not about doing less. It's about doing what matters most. The paradox of simplicity also reveals why complexity often dominates our lives. It's easier to say yes to everything, to keep adding tasks, possessions, and information than it is to decide what to exclude. But complexity drains your energy, clutters your mind, and dilutes your focus. Simplicity, by contrast, creates space to think, to breathe, to focus on what's truly important. But here's the catch. Simplicity doesn't mean stripping things down to the point of emptiness. It's not about doing less for the sake of it. True simplicity enhances meaning by removing distractions. It's about focusing on the core, the essence, the heart of what matters. Think of the most impactful speeches, designs, or ideas you've encountered. They're rarely overloaded with details or ornamentation. They're simple, clear, and powerful. That power doesn't come from what was added. It comes from what was taken away. So how do you navigate the paradox of simplicity? Start by embracing subtraction. Ask yourself, what's essential? What can I remove to make this clearer, easier, or more meaningful? Whether it's your schedule, your work, or your surroundings, focus on cutting out the noise. Next, practice patience. Simplicity doesn't happen overnight. It's a process of trial and error, of refining and iterating, of peeling back the layers until you reach the core. Give yourself the time and space to figure out what truly matters. The paradox also invites you to rethink success. Complexity often masquerades as sophistication. You might think that piling on more features, more responsibilities, more possessions makes something better. But true success often lies in doing less, but doing it better. Learn to value clarity over perfection. Simplicity isn't about getting everything right. It's about making things accessible, understandable, and meaningful. It's about creating space for what matters most, even if it means letting go of the rest. The paradox of simplicity reminds us that less is often more, but achieving less requires effort. It's not about avoiding hard work. It's about focusing your energy on the work that matters. So the next time you're overwhelmed by complexity, pause. Ask yourself, what can I remove? What truly matters here? Because simplicity isn't just about clearing away the clutter. It's about uncovering the beauty, the clarity, and the purpose that lie beneath. In the end, simplicity isn't simple. It's a discipline, a mindset, a way of life. But when you embrace it, you find that what remains is not only lighter, but also infinitely more meaningful. The paradox of gratitude. You chase more success, more possessions, more recognition. It feels like happiness is always just one step ahead, waiting for you to catch up. But here's the paradox. The more you focus on what you already have, the less you feel the need for more. Gratitude doesn't add to your life materially, it transforms how you see it. This is the paradox of gratitude. The more you practice thankfulness, the more abundant your life feels. Gratitude creates a mindset of plenty, showing you that what you have is already enough. Think about the last time you truly felt grateful. Maybe it was a quiet moment, like watching the sunrise, or a shared laugh with someone you love. In that instant, your thoughts of what you lacked dissolved. The longing for more faded, replaced by an overwhelming sense of fullness. That's the power of gratitude. It shifts your perspective, revealing richness you didn't even realize was there. The paradox lies in how gratitude works. It rewires your mind to focus on what's present rather than what's missing. Instead of scanning your life for gaps, it highlights the abundance already around you. Imagine holding a nearly full glass of water. You can fixate on the space at the top and feel it's incomplete, or you can focus on the water and appreciate its life-sustaining presence. Gratitude is the lens that changes how you see that glass. But practicing gratitude isn't always easy. The modern world thrives on dissatisfaction. Ads, social media, and cultural narratives constantly remind you of what you don't have, encouraging you to compare your life to an impossible standard. Gratitude, however, invites you to step away from that cycle. It asks you to pause and see what's good, even in the ordinary moments you might otherwise overlook. And here's where the paradox deepens. Gratitude doesn't just make you feel like you have enough. It often brings more into your life. When you focus on the positives, you radiate contentment and openness. People are drawn to that energy. Relationships deepen, and opportunities seem to flow naturally. The paradox of gratitude also reveals a profound truth about happiness. You might think joy comes from achieving or acquiring, but it's rooted in appreciation. Even if you had everything you ever wanted, without gratitude, you'd still feel empty. On the other hand, even modest circumstances can feel abundant when you focus on the gifts within them. But gratitude doesn't mean ignoring struggles or pretending life is perfect. It's about finding something to be thankful for, even amid hardship. Maybe it's the resilience you discover, the support of a friend, or the strength to take one more step. Gratitude reframes challenges as part of your journey, not just obstacles in your path. To embrace the paradox of gratitude, start small. Reflect daily on what you're thankful for: a meal, a smile, a moment of peace. Write it down or share it with someone. Gratitude grows the more you practice it. Gratitude isn't about adding more to your life. It's about seeing what's already there with new eyes. And in that realization, you discover a kind of abundance no amount of striving could ever bring.